Hey book besties and cozy cousins. It's me, Amma B, and I'm back at it again. And today we are going to be talking about all of our Q1 favorites. This is our Q1 wrap up. This is the first time I think I've ever done anything like this, but I've seen a lot of my favorite bookish creators like Kalila, Talia Cadet, and Shaughnessy do like wrap-ups monthly. So I thought it would be great for me since, you know, I don't read nearly as much, girl. You know, I love the TV too. I thought it would be fun if I do a Q1 wrap-up where I talk about the 10 books that I've read since the beginning of the year. But before we go there, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already. And if you've never seen my face before, hi, I'm Amma. I love to talk about books, all things cozy, hobby, and small town. So you can come on adventures with me or hear my little rants about the books that I have fallen in love with. Without further ado, let's get started. I have my handy dandy journal here that my sister gave me for all of my wild thoughts. So it's been a really great way for me to keep track of all my YouTube ideas. So I have wrote down a little bit of the notes for each book. I tried to do them in order, so if it's not in order, blame Goodreads. Thank you. So the very first book that I got to read this year was actually an ARC that was sent to me by way of NetGalley. If you are a bookish creator and you want access to books before they are published, make sure to check out NetGalley. I don't even believe there is a follower count that you need to achieve to be able to get onto NetGalley. As long as you review books on Goodreads and Amazon, you're good to go. So one of the first ARCs that I got this year was actually from one of my auto-buy authors, Kimberly Lemming. If you don't know Kimberly Lemming, she actually wrote the Mead Mishap series. You know, that time I got drunk and saved a demon, that time I got drunk and yeeted a love potion at a werewolf, and that time I got drunk and saved a human. Girl, absolutely love, absolutely stand. And the audiobooks, my library is probably so sick of me because I literally like rent one of those audiobooks like once or twice a year. It's pretty out of control. Anyways, excuse me, once or twice a month because I be needing it. I love the southern accents. Anyways, we're off track. Usually Kimberly Lemming is quite the fantasy girly, but in her newest series, which I believe is also going to be a trilogy, the Cosmic Chaos series, we have I got abducted by aliens and now I'm trapped in a rom-com. Girl. This actually came out in February. I believe it's February 18th. If not, I'll put it on the screen. And it follows our redheaded main character, which is just so locked in with 2025 because you know all the girlies are now natural redheads. So it just feels very on brand. It feels very on brand. But what I love the most about this is that it follows a character who is a animal researcher. She's currently in, I want to say Africa. Now, I read this at the beginning of the year, get off my back. And she is somewhere in the Sahara studying the mating patterns of lions. When all of a sudden a lion comes and attacks her, in the midst of being attacked, literally jaws in her neck, she is beamed up in an alien spaceship, they've done some sort of test on her. She wakes up in the middle of it, she escapes and ends up realizing she is very, very far away from home. Like, she was fine with the fact that, like, dang, I died in the field, but now she didn't really die in the field. She got abducted right before she got eaten by a lion, which is wild. This is wild. In the midst of all of that, she realizes not only did she get abducted, but she is a part of her own mating observation on this alien planet with two, not one, but two. One more time, not one, but two alien mates as they try to go on an adventure to figure out either how to get home or figure out what is going on. Now, honey, I've always been a fan of paranormal romance. I like it. My first crush was the Phantom of the Opera. I don't feel like that's paranormal romance, but like that's the introduction to paranormal romance. You know what I'm saying? But if you're like me, you understand that anything that's a little bit off, paranormal romance. Let me tell you something about these aliens. First of all, it's a why choose harem. MMF. If you know what that stands for, it means everybody dallying. Everybody is dallying. Kimberly Lemon is the queen of literally just the spiciest romance that will have you belly laughing. Like, I think I read this book in a day because I just could not go to sleep. I was like, I have to keep going. I love these characters. I absolutely love the mission that they're on and all of the crazy things that happen in between. Y'all, I'm not even giving spoilers at this point. I'm just giving you a little bit of seasoning. It's a little bit of seasoning. It's not spoiled, it's seasoned. Overall, I rated this 5 stars. There's not been a Kimberly Lemon book that I haven't absolutely enjoyed and look forward to reading again. So she's an auto-buy author. She's auto-buy, like, automatically 5 stars because I know whether I read it or not, it's going to be a 5-star. It's going to be a 5-star. So highly recommend. If you haven't read that yet, make sure to check it out. And also make sure to check out the Mead Mishap series set in like a feudal fantasy era. Also paranormal romance, also filthy, also hilarious. Those are the things you can always get from Kimberly Lemon. And trust me, when I say this is called Cosmic Chaos for a reason, it's cosmic chaos, girl. It's cosmic chaos. I started the year with a little bit of paranormal romance, but towards the end of January, going into February, I was like the horror queen. Like, I only wanted to read horror, and particularly from one author that had been on my TBR since last year. Grady Hendrix was recommended to me by one of my former colleagues, now book bestie. And I have read not 1, not 2, but 3 of his books. Wild ride, right? And the first one that I read was actually the Final Girl support group. I did it out of order again. Remember, blame Goodreads, don't blame me. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I did not rate this very highly. I did not enjoy this read. I definitely was invested though, so that's why I still wanted to rate it. I don't know if I gave a review. You would have to check out my Goodreads. If we're not currently friends on Goodreads, make sure to click the link down in my description box so that we can become book besties for real. But the Final Girl support group is literally a support group of women that have survived like the epidemic of serial killers that happened, especially is spiked around the 70s and 80s. Now, this is one thing I will say without giving away too much of the plot. It is a very interesting commentary on how we in horror do not think, the lovers of horror, the writers of horror, anybody that is involved in horror, do not realize that the final girls or the people that are so disposable in horror movies are people. And not only that, but women in horror are punished for literally existing. And it's almost like sometimes you get into this weird realization that like nobody ever cares what happens to the final girl after it's all over, right? Like everybody else is dead, but she has to live with the fact that she lived through that. Not to mention the culture of, you know, serial killers, where people are so obsessed with serial killers that, you know, they want to do copycat, they want to join their cults, they want them to be free, they, you know, automatically have an obsession and kind of a hatred for final girls. And it just kind of shows how different women who have gone through this particular phenomenon kind of cope with it, you know, whether it is completely becoming a recluse and not feeling safe anywhere, which our main character definitely, you know, is going through. Another character, you know, turns her pain into passion and buys the camp that her incident happened on and turns it into basically like a rehabilitation center for girls and women that, you know, horrible things have happened to them. I think it's super interesting. The concept is super interesting. The main character, I wouldn't say she's not likable, but she's hard to read because the entire time you're kind of questioning, well, what's going on here? Like, why are you so closed? And like, of course, the argument can be made if something horrible like that happened, like you have no idea how you would react. You don't know what kind of person you would become. But it's almost like the entire time you're almost suspicious of her, which I think is interesting. And towards the end, once we realize what's actually happening, for me, I felt like it was long, it was slow, and the payoff wasn't really worth it. So the rating for me was 2 stars, but it did not stop me from continuing to read the other 2 Grady Hendrix books that I read. And I will say I am happy that I read them because as I continued on, the star ratings did get higher. I mean, not so high. It wasn't astronomically high, but it was definitely better than the first because I rated that 2 stars, and I rarely rate things 2 stars. Definitely rated that 2 stars and was like, okay. But something that I really like about Grady Hendrix is that he uses horror to make social commentary on the way that our society views certain things or people. And I think that's super interesting, which leads me into, get my handy dandy journal, girl. That leads me into the Southerner Book Club Guide to Slaying Vampires. Okay, setting the scene here. Essentially, a group of women start a book club. They're all, you know, women that live within a pretty well-to-do neighborhood in South Carolina. They start a book club. They first start reading like these kind of boring books. They break off from another book club and start reading true crime. Like they become obsessed with like the junkiest true crime books and, you know, become this, you know, cute little book club, right? Fast forward, a stranger moves into town and strange happenings start to happen on the other side of town, like very much the other side of the railroad tracks, the black side. This is a very interesting commentary on race and gentrification and how when gentrification benefits people, they don't really care about the fallout of the people that it doesn't benefit. But our main character does, because she knows that there's only a matter of time before it's happening to the people who nobody cares about and everybody forgets. It's slowly going to start working its way into her side of town, which it does. And even though she tries to use her privilege to be able to be ally for the people on the other side of town, we see how that goes wrong multiple times, but it does not take away the fact that, y'all, when I tell you this is a good read, because I feel like the Final Girl support group did not have the amount of action needed to keep it going for as long as it did. It was like 300, 400 pages. Like, it was a long book. But this one, even though it ebbed and flowed and went through, I'm not even kidding, like something like 6 or 7 years. It was over the course of 6 or 7 years. What I thought was most interesting is that the incidents that culminated for her to realize that this person was not who they seem didn't necessarily at first make you feel like, oh, like inherently vampire, but it did after a while make you realize like, oh, okay, y'all did that. Like, y'all definitely did that. Okay, Grady. So I'm not gonna lie, I definitely rated this higher than I rated the Final Girl support group. This was 3 stars for me, but 3 stars is not a bad rating at all. It just, you know, for me, it was okay. It wasn't something that I would recommend to everybody, because definitely, like, whenever I'm reading horror or thriller, I need to get in and get out. I want to be able to read it in a day and be like, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? But I definitely didn't feel that for this necessarily. I definitely felt like it was a read that would be great for a book club, because there were a lot of really interesting points that could be discussed, from the horror aspects to just how the society was set up. Especially it being in the South, based in like the early 90s. I thought that was super interesting and a very interesting take. And in his dedication, he was saying, you know, he didn't want a normal vampire story. He wanted the vampire story of if his mother, who he didn't know was as fierce as she was until she was older, like if she had encountered vampires and what would happen if her and her friends had to stop them. So good. So good, y'all. Number 3 is Horror Store. This is the last Grady Hendrix book that I read. Again, I believe in the month of January going into February. But Horror Store I really liked, because this horror was based in over a singular day in a IKEA like store. And if you've never been to IKEA, it is a, you know, budget friendly furniture store that is almost set up like a home. You go through these different sections that are set up essentially like a home, but there had been a string of vandalism that happens. The main character is asked by her manager to stay the night along with another team member so that they can figure out what's going on, because the cameras at that time go off whenever the vandalism happens, and it's stacking up to be quite a bit of property damage. So it's a relatively new store. It's been there a couple of years, but there have been some strange happenings that happen there. What they also find out is that in the secret uncovered history, that there used to be a jail that was on that same property. And what we uncover about that information definitely goes into the horror aspect of it. Essentially, they are locked into this like reality bending horror, literally horror store. So it's kind of a play on like a haunted house, in that it's a haunted store in a house furnishing store, which I thought was super duper interesting. The characters I thought were extremely well written, and I also thought the concept was very interesting, and it kept me the entire way. As you move through the chapters, each chapter is named after a particular piece of furniture, and it goes from a particular piece of furniture to a piece of torture device that is kind of in the same vein as the furniture. So interesting, y'all. Like, I'm not even kidding. If you remember IKEA from the late 90s, early 2000s, this is going to be so nostalgic for you. And it was just such a genius concept that literally kept you the entire way through and was truthfully horrifying. Like, there were no points where I was like, oh, that's not so bad. Like, I was like a couple of times I would have to describe to my now husband, like, honey, this is just too crazy. He'd be like, don't be reading it, it's late. I'd be like, I can't stop. Like, it's too good. So I read that over the course of 2 days. That was 4 stars for me. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Lost a star. There are some conversations about just like racial and wealth disparity that I thought were very interesting, and a very, again, a genius way to talk about social commentary while giving you a wildly interesting, horrifying story. Finally, to kind of wrap up my little horror time, I did keep reading horror. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't stop. I reread Coraline, but I read it in the graphic novel version. Not gonna give too many points on this. Don't really want to talk too much about Neil Gaiman. It's a rocky subject. But what I did think was so interesting is that Coraline within the graphic novel, there is so much context that's added with having a visual aspect to something, that even when I read it, there were certain things that jumped out that aren't necessarily seen in the Henry Select version of Coraline that we get in the movie, and they're not as easily illustrated in the book. So really was a big fan of that. I didn't actually rate it. I would have rated it 5 stars because Coraline is an absolute masterpiece. I will probably read it every year for the rest of my life. That's just true. But what I thought was so interesting was just that, you know, that visual aspect of something, like going from your imagination to what you're reading to being able to fully see whatever somebody is describing, is out of control. And there were so many pieces of context that were hinted at in the book that I picked up on because I just pay attention, that were further confirmed in the graphic novel, that I just really, I really needed it. I was a big fan. So not too much on that one. We're going to keep rolling. The next book that I read, book number 6, was This Cursed House by Dale Sandine. This was a very, very interesting read. Now, my rating is a funny one, but I will explain it. Essentially, this is based in the 1950s or 60s in Louisiana, New Orleans, and this character is running away from a cruddy boyfriend up north in Chicago. She decides to go to New Orleans, take a job as for what she thought was an au pair or a nanny, but it actually turns out that she is being summoned back to a place that is connected to her past, as she's adopted to ultimately break a curse for a very strange family, like extremely strange family. And as she finds out more about why they're cursed, what happened to them, and how it directly connects not only to their particular lineage, but even further, you know, in front of that, it's wild. And I'm not gonna lie, this was a book that I definitely would recommend. It is so haunting, but it is extremely triggering. As a dark-skinned woman that grew up in, you know, not super southern, but a relatively southern town that was just as color struck, like, this was, to me, pretty triggering. Like, there were parts, because the main character is, you know, of a browner skin complexion than the, you know, white passing family that she comes to work for and live with. There are just a couple of moments that just are like, girl, okay, girl, all right, you know. And of course, for the time, it definitely is hitting the nail on the head over the time, as well as the place. You know, New Orleans definitely had a large population of Black people that wanted to pass so that they could assimilate and essentially be left alone. So that is a whole nother history for another day. But I will say, haunting but triggering. The story, however, wildly interesting. There are a couple of points where it feels disjointed, but it all comes together at the end. And just honestly, the third act of the book, you're gonna be like, girl, I can't take no more. But then there's more to take. So yeah, definitely recommend. But I will say, there's SA, there's incest, there's some things. So definitely check your trigger warnings. Check your trigger warning. So essentially that got a 3-star from me. It's not so much about the subject matter as much as how the subject matter made me feel. I usually give my rating system based on how likely I am to reread it and how easily it is to recommend to other people. I know people that have had my experience probably wouldn't want to read a book like this. You know what I mean? Even though it is a well-written, very interesting, very well-researched book, it's hard to read. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those movies that you're only going to watch once, like Fruitvale Station, or, you know what I mean? There's it's not that it's bad. It's just that the subject matter is so gripping. It's like, oh, okay, girl, you know, like, oh, okay, girl, thank you. I'll do this one time. Thank you. You know, on a lighter note, momentarily, I read Kennedy Ryan's This Could Be Us, the second installment of the Skyland series. This follows Soledad's story as she navigates going through a rocky relationship with her husband, and he gets into some legal trouble, how that essentially turns her life upside down, and how she has to rebuild not only after a betrayal and heartbreak like that, but also, you know, falling into a little bit of a forbidden love situation as the man who is kind of the whistleblower for her husband's controversy. Let's say controversy. She and him have an undeniable connection, and it kind of follows them trying to, you know, explore that in a safe way. I really, really love the autism representation and just the parenthood representation. As me now, I am 7 months pregnant. It was really nice to see how parenthood expands love in your life and doesn't necessarily constrict it. No matter what the circumstances are, I really, 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 really was a fan of Judah Cross. Loved him down, girl. But I also was a really big fan of Soledad and just her resilience through all of it. It wasn't that she necessarily had to be a strong Black woman, but she was resilient. She never stopped. Also, we have to talk about the fact that within the book, as she starts her content creator and influencer life to start trying to support her children, she stumbles across Bell Hooks' All About Love, which, if anybody has been on this page a little bit of time, you know that is one of my absolute favorite books. I will always highly recommend it. It absolutely changed my life and my perspective on how I give and receive love, platonically, romantically, familially, and with myself. I highly recommend it, especially if you are going through a transformative or transitional time. It is definitely a book that is just always going to get it. 5 stars. Kennedy Ryan is another auto-buy author for me. I've never read a book from her that I didn't enjoy. Now, I will say I've only read the Skyland series, which there will be another one in this breakdown, but we're going to keep going. The next one, Delicious Monsters. Let me tell you something. Lizelle Sambury, another one of my auto-buy authors. Really a big fan of her. I've discovered her with Blood Like Magic and Blood Like Fate, a very interesting fusion of sci-fi and fantasy witch series with a first-gen family living in Canada. They're Trinidadian, and just all of the culture that was within it, but also the horror aspects, as well as the fantastical aspects, as well as the familial aspects. She will just always be that girl, and I can always count on her on showing different family dynamics while also keeping a story that is so deeply about self and like a coming of age story that never forgets family, but also forges to find their own identity. Such a big fan. This particular one, Delicious Monsters, is centered around a remote haunted house that is inherited by the main character and her mother, who want to turn it into an Airbnb, but the house has a long history of terror, honey. Let's just say terror. Not too far away from them, off on the other side of the property where, you know, their property begins, there is a family of psychics and spiritual intuitives that are trying to kind of warn them, like, this house needs to be cleansed. It's not really a safe place. I wouldn't be opening it for business. And honey, when I tell you, things devolve from there. The main character, Daisy, is actually a medium. She can see and interact with ghosts, but she hates her ability. It is so debilitating to her because of the bad experiences that she's had. And, you know, we come to find out a little bit more about why she has that ability, what happened, and what triggered those things. There is quite a bit of, you know, trigger warnings that I would highly recommend people, you know, look out for, especially if, you know, child essay is, you know, something that triggers you. It's not on page, but the trauma of it is very palpable. So I would highly recommend to, you know, check your trigger warnings and check your mental health to make sure that it's something that you can read. It is a dual POV between Daisy for about 3 chapters at a time, and then it switches to another main character who is 10 years in the future from where the book, most of the book is set, but they are investigating the hauntings that happen within the house and all of the controversy around it, as well as Daisy. And what I find so interesting is the parallels between like strained mother-daughter relationships, especially as it relates to that particular house. Definitely recommend reading it. It is truly a masterpiece. I listened to it on audiobook, but I don't feel like I finished it on audiobook. I definitely read it on ebook, but it was really just such a gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching story. I would highly recommend. 5 stars for me. I absolutely loved it. I think this is one of my highest rated Lizelle Sambury books because it was just so intentional. Every piece of it, every like piece of plot was just so well written, and I was just really a big fan. And even though the main character was frustrating, she still was so easily understood, especially at the time that she was in and the things that she was dealing with. It was just like, girl, I get it, girl. But the growth was definitely so amazing. And I think the underlying theme was just like, what does it look like when young Black girls are left unprotected in vicious cycles of abuse or neglect, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so well written. I highly recommend. So the next is actually a very short story that I found on Kindle Unlimited. It's called Waves of Passion, a Curvy Girl Paranormal Romance. This is about a medicine woman who lives like on the outskirts of town. She is constantly kind of ridiculed by her town for being a medicine woman after years and years and years of her grandmother sticking up for the mermaids that are used at the local brothel. Her grandmother is murdered and her family is essentially, you know, banished to the outskirts, but they still come and be trying to, you know, cure their ailments and things, especially of the variety because of the mermaid brothel. But the main character meets the queen of the mermaids, who has a plan to free the mermaids there. Very, very short. I don't even think it's 80 pages. Super interesting read. I will say the writing style gives Wattpad. Like, it's definitely not something that you want to read if you're, you know, very hard up on writing style. But I will say that the story and characterization makes up for it. Because at first I was like, oh girl, I'm not going to be able to get through this. But I was like, girl, it's 70 pages. Like, come on. It's 70 pages. You'll be fine. But I will say characterization is definitely there. And the sapphic love story, definitely a good one. The spice is also pretty great too. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't expect it to be spicy, but it was spicy in a couple of parts. And again, curvy girl, paranormal romance, love every piece of it. That one for me was 4 stars just because it was short, it was to the point, but I would definitely read it again. Even though, you know, I can be a stickler for writing style, I wasn't for this particular novel because I thought that it was interesting. So, yeah. And we're winding down into our 10th book, but before we get there, if you have been enjoying this movie, girl, yes, it is a movie. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Leave me a comment of what book you're most likely to read and what books have you been enjoying this year. This last book was also an advanced reader copy or an ARC that I got from NetGalley. This is Kennedy Ryan's Can't Get Enough, which drops May the 13th. I am so excited. I have already pre-ordered my copy. I can't wait to get it. Even though I've already read it, girl, I need to add it to my collection. If you can see right up here, before I let go, and This Could Be Us is waiting for it, Can't Get Enough. And this follows Hendrix' story. This is the 3rd in the Skyland series. And Hendrix, we all know, is the rich auntie in the other 2 books. She is just very put together. She's like a talent agent within Hollywood, and her dream is to work and enter into the movie production side of things. She gets an opportunity to produce a TV show for one of her clients alongside, you know, a work colleague that she's met that, you know, they're vibing and getting along. However, that work colleague's ex-boyfriend is a billionaire named Maverick Bell that is very interested in Hendrix, and he's not giving up until she does. Clock it. Cool. Very much a great read. Very much tantalizing. And what I love most about it is that she is relentlessly herself while also learning that she can still be herself without having to be strong all the time. It is such a good read. It is so enjoyable, and again, there's always a familial aspect in Kennedy Ryan. For This Could Be Us, it was definitely about parenthood and how that affects your personhood, but this particular one was about having ambition while also wanting to be there for your family, while also wanting to be there for yourself, while also wanting to explore something that you actually want. Like, what do those things actually look like? Her mother is suffering with Alzheimer's, and it's just progressively getting worse. And there are just so many parts within the book that just are so unbelievably healing to see. Not only is she a tall chocolate woman that's thick, me being 6 foot, thick, brown, yeah, but she also is relentless in her pursuit of happiness. Like, she truthfully just wants all of her dreams to come true and all the people she loves dreams to come true, and seeing how she balances all of that while keeping her sanity is absolutely so inspiring. And you know, watching her kind of soften and ease and realize that everything isn't end all be all, that what's for you is for you, and what will, you know, your work ethic and merit will always stand bigger than a controversy that's, you know, 5 seconds long. So interesting. Such a good read. Of course, 5 stars for me. Really big fan. Kennedy Ryan is an auto-buy author for me. As you guys know, I've already told you what This Could Be Us, but the Skyland series, 5 stars all across. Absolutely amazing. I've gotten to interact with Kennedy Ryan on threads about it, because just reading it, I was like, girl, y'all thought y'all loved what's baby's name from Before I Let Go? I want to say Makai. That's not right. I'm gonna get it. Whoever. Y'all thought y'all loved the love interest And Before I Let Go and This Could Be Us, baby, Maverick Bell. Maverick Bell. Because he has the thoughtfulness, but he also has the coins. He has the coins. And the spice. The spice. I'm not going to lie. In This Could Be Us, the spice was there. But in this, the spice was there, honey. There. I'm not going to spoil anything. But just know when May 13th comes, about May 15th, that's all I'm giving y'all. I'm giving y'all 2 days to read it. I'm giving y'all 2 days to buy it. That's when I'm going to be talking about my favorite parts. But if you are interested in seeing how I felt throughout any of those books, I try to keep up with my Goodreads and update regularly. If you're interested in reading any of those books, please check out my links down below. They do go to my Amazon storefront and I do get a smidge of commission, but it's not affecting your price. It's just giving me a little cut of something. So if you want to support your girl, make sure to check out the description down below. And don't forget, I know this is the third time I'm saying it, don't forget to subscribe. It really does help. Hit that bell notification so you're notified every single time I upload a new video. And leave me a comment down below of what your favorite part was. And did you read any of these books? Did you rate them similarly? I have to know. I'd love to chit chat about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Bye.